Hi, this is Brian with ActiveMelody.com. In this week's guitar lesson, we're going to take a look at a Zydeco, or Cajun style rhythm and lead, and I'm going to show you how to play in the offbeat. So that's something, maybe you don't know what I mean when I say play on the offbeat. I'm going to explain all of that in this lesson, show you how to play everything that I played in the intro, note for note. We'll break all of it down. And for those of you that have issues with timing, this would be a good lesson for you because we're going to be spending most of our time and emphasis on getting the timing right. That's really the key as a guitar player when you're trying to play this style of music. So I've got this lesson split into two parts. In this video we're going to take a look at the first half. If you'd like to watch the second half, as well as download the MP3 jam track, which I have in multiple tempos by the way, and the tablature for this lesson, you can get all of that at ActiveMelody.com. Just look for EP181. That's the lesson number for this lesson. So let's go ahead and get started with Zydeco Part 1. Alright, so let's talk through the structure of this song first. I think that's important for us to all be on the same page, know what we're dealing with, and then we'll jump into all the specific strum patterns and when to play and the lead licks and all of that stuff that I played in the intro. So this song is in the key of E, and there's two chords in it. There's an E chord and a B chord. It's a 1-5 chord progression for those of you following the number system. 90% of what the rhythm part is playing is just the E chord, so you're hanging out on that E chord most of the time. There are 2 points, however, where you're going to play the B chord, and I'll explain exactly where those 2 points are just so you know where that is, and you can kind of practice playing along with the jam track and switching in those 2 points. Now there's 8 measures in this, and then it repeats. So let me go ahead and count out those 8 measures. Now I want you to pay attention to 2 measures. Pay attention to the 4th measure, actually the second half of the 4th measure. That's going to be at one of the places where we switch to the B chord. And then the 8th measure, the first half of the 8th measure. And I'll point those out as we get to them. So here we go. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4. It started on the right in the middle of the 4th measure there. 4, 2, 3, 4. And that's the B chord. 5, 6, 7, 8, 2, 3, 4. So there's the beginning of the 8th measure, was the other place where we switch to the B chord. Everything else is just the E chord. So that might be something to, even before you get into what we're about to learn, just to play along with the jam track and see if you can switch chords in those 2 places just intuitively. And you can kind of feel it. The bass player will be following along with those changes, the accordion part as well. So it's an option for you to think about. But that's the structure of the song. Now, in the intro I mentioned that what we're going to be playing in this Cajun or Zydeco style is you're going to be playing on the offbeat, or think of that as the and notes. So if we're counting each measure, we're going to count it 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And every time I said and, I'm going to do an upstroke with my right hand and play these little chord bursts. Now what I'm doing with the left hand is I'm just making an E chord here, and you'll see in the tab I've tabbed out strings 1, 2, and 3, so just the top 3 strings of the E chord. And this is what it looks like. So you have 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So you're playing on the off stroke. Now it's important to do that as an upstroke and not a downstroke. If you try and do those as downstrokes, you're going to throw yourself off and it'll be twice as hard. So even though that may be counterintuitive to try and do an upstroke, you've really got to do that to play this style. Now what I'm doing, I want you to first watch my right hand. So two things are happening. I'm doing that upstroke. I'm also using this part of my hand when I come down to kind of kill the strings so that they don't ring out. You don't want it to sound like this. You want it to be... Now I'm hitting the pickup there, which is making that little pop. But that's what you do with the right hand. Now if you'll look at the left hand, when I do this, you'll see that it pulses every time I'm doing a stroke with my right hand. The two hands are in sync, just like this. And it feels very intuitive once you get that down. Now I remember struggling with that when I tried to learn this technique a long time ago. And so what I had to do is I had to take it very slowly and just try and get a consistency, even if it's slow, but where I'm making these little pulses with upstrokes with my right hand. By the way, part of the reason that you're pulsating with your left hand is that's also helping to mute the strings. But when you get those two in sync, it starts to really, it just sort of clicks. It feels right. And then you can take the tempo up and start to play that stuff faster. Now normally what you would try and do is not have any open strings when you're doing that. So you might do your E chord up here, but there's so many of these little lead licks that I was doing down here that it just made sense to do my E chord down in this position. Okay, so that's how you do it. So it's on the and note. So in that first measure, now if you're looking at your tablature, you'll notice the very first thing I did right on the 1 was I did a muted strum. And I'm playing strings 6, 5, and 4 out of that E chord. And that's just to establish it. So when I'm counting this off, you'll hear that at the beginning. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, and then the ands start. Okay? So let's go on to measure 2. So that's what measure 1 looks like. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and... So just practice that until you can start to get a groove. Slow it down if you need to. And remember, I've got that slower version of the jam track as well. So that if you're just kind of like feeling overwhelmed right now and you want to practice along, definitely start with the slower version. Okay, now we go on to measure 2, and measure 2 looks like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and... So the first half of that measure was the same chord thing where I'm going... I did 2 more of those upstrokes, but then I went... And that's 2nd fret 1st string, so downstroke with my right hand. There's an upstroke, taking my hand off the fretboard here, so it's the open 1 string. There's a downstroke on the 2nd fret 2nd string, and then an upstroke again on string 1. So it goes. Now the thing to pay attention to is my right hand. Watch the fact that it never breaks motion. And I've said this in a lot of videos, but that's the key to playing rhythm and staying in a groove. Even though I'm switching between like playing a lead or a rhythm part and a little lead part. This never changes. I'm just I'm jumping in at different points here like this, but the motion never changes, I guess. Okay? So let's look at measure 1 and 2 again. So we have... Now we're going to repeat. That's measure 3. Measure 3 looks the same as measure 1. Now let's go into measure 4. Now remember, measure 4 was where we're going to play the first half of measure 4 is just 2 more upstrokes, but then we're starting at the midpoint. We're going to play a B chord. That sounds out of tune. Maybe not. And now here's how I'm making the B chord. There's different ways you could make it. But what I'm doing is I'm just taking the top 3 strings here and playing it here so that my index finger is on the 2nd fret 1st string, my ring finger is on the 4th fret 2nd string, and then my middle finger is on the 4th fret 3rd string. And I'm just playing those top 3 strings. I just thought that sounded the best. I played with different variations of it, but I kind of like that one best. If you want to grab a B chord in another way, that's totally fine. But that's how I'm doing it, and that's how I tabbed it. So So just remember, let's just play that 4th fret. It goes 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now all I did was I just hit a downstroke and let it ring out 3, 4, and then we go right back in measure 5 to the same thing that we did in measure 1. So just remember, once you hit that B chord, just let it ring out. I think I sort of instinctively added that as like a nice little stop so that we can kind of reset ourselves. So think about that as you're playing rhythm. You don't have to. You can break it up, I guess, if you can find points, especially if it's starting to get ahead of you. Just find a way to make a chord ring out, even if it's that E chord, until you can jump back on the train. All right, let's go back to the beginning, and I'll count out the measures as we play past them. So here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we're going on to measure 5. 5, 6. Now notice 5 and 6 looked exactly like 1 and 2. So we don't need to learn anything new there. 5, 6. Alright, so there's this little lead part that happens in measure 7. And that's played using the major pentatonic scale. Now I'm in pattern 2, for those of you that are curious what pattern I'm using. It's pattern 2 of the major pentatonic scale for E. So it kind of looks like that. Now, if you don't know what I mean by pattern, just know this. Just remember this, I should say. If you're playing an E, you've got this happy little place. When I say major, it's going to sound, major means it's not going to sound sad. This sounds real happy and upbeat, so we're going to play some happy, positive notes. And what you've got is you got your open 2nd string, there's the 2nd fret, your open 1st string, and then there's the 2nd fret on the 1st string. Those are 4 notes that are great. Now you add in this one, so if we slide up 2 frets to the 4th fret on the 1st string, now you have these 5 notes. There's Vincent, right? So what's nice about this little shape is you can do so much with these 5 notes. Now this is another whole sidebar lesson. You're getting a lot of bonus in this. But if you wanted to play a slow blues, or even it doesn't have to be blues, but just to illustrate my point. That's just using those same notes. So I've learned to make total solos, entire solos, out of those 5 notes. So there's a lot you can do in this space. Just wanted to point that out. So don't underestimate, don't just think of it as, oh, I'm just going to have to do this for this one-off Cajun Zydeco thing. You've got a lot in this little area here. Okay. And it's easy. It's sort of intuitive. I think that's the other thing I like about it. It's like right there, right off the E chord. So I could keep going with that, but I'm going to stop. All right, so back to the 7th measure. Actually, I'm going to combine the 7th and 8th measures together because this little lead spills into 7 and 8, 7th and 8th measures. But it goes. That's what we're going to learn, and then it resets itself. Now, I did this 2 ways. So the first time through, I played it that way. Now, the second time through, if you'll notice in the intro, I played it this way. That way's a little easier, so I wanted to give 2 versions of that, depending on where you were with your skill level. Maybe that would be easier to play version 2, but that way you have some variety. So that's really the only difference in the first time through and the second time through is how I ended it. That would be A, and that would be B. So let's start with the first time through, which would be A, and we're going to start here on the 4th fret, 1st string. Now this is that little extension I just showed you. Downstroke with the right hand, upstroke on the open note, open E. There's the 2nd fret, 1st string. There's the open 1st string. And then there's the 2nd fret, 2nd string. There's an upstroke on the open 1 string. Now watch this. It sounds really fast when you hear it, but all I'm doing is doing a slide. I'm starting here on the 3rd fret, 2nd string. As soon as I pick it, I slide it down to the 2nd fret on the 2nd string. And then I play the open B string and the open 2 string. So we have, okay? Now watch the right hand. It's just down, up, down, up, down, up. Now we're going to come down, and that's on the 2nd fret, 3rd string. There's an upstroke on the B string, or the open 2 string. So we have, now we're going to come down again on the open 3rd string. And then there's the fretting on the 1st fret, 3rd string. So we have, and then when I played that, I went ahead and put my fingers in position to play the E chord. And then I hit the top 1 string, or the top 1 and 2 strings, either way. And then we're right back into the groove. So all together, that piece, that's a great little lick. If you walk away with nothing else in this lesson but just that lick, that's a good one. And then it repeats. Now the second time through, I mentioned that I changed that. I played everything the same except for the ending there, starting at the 7th measure. And what I did there, it started out the same. That's the same. So it's 4, open, 2, open, 2nd fret, 2nd string, open 1 string. That's the same. And then I just repeated that. I went right back to 4, right back to 2. There's the 2nd fret, 2nd string, open 2nd string, and then the 1 string. So let me play through that slowly. And then we're right back to whatever that next part is. Actually, that's where we're going to go into part 2. Now I'm going to save that for the next video. Some of the stuff that we're going to get into to continue that. But that gives you a lot to practice with. Now if you've got that MP3 jam track, like I said, you may want to start with a slower version just to kind of start to feel it out. But when you finally get this thing up to speed, it's so much fun to play. You feel like you're part of a band. It's like I was having a blast just doing this in my living room. All right, and by the way, the accordion part was just me on the keyboard. I found an accordion setting in the software I was using, so it's not authentic accordion. All right, so let me go ahead and play through the first 2 sections, and then we'll save section 3 and 4 for the next video. So here we go. And there you have it. There's part 1. We'll see you in part 2.